Each year, billions of dollars are being stolen, and the weapon the thief holds in his hand isn't a gun, it's a telephone. Technology has led to a new type of phone scam. This isn't just a case of someone stealing your calling card. This scam is so sophisticated, it goes right into the telephone computer system.
Hi and welcome along to Byte High No Limit. Byte High No Limit is a podcast about people's relationships with technology. In this episode, we'll be talking phone phreaking with Patrick and Cody. Patrick has a YouTube channel at CGN Fridays, and Cody also has a YouTube channel at Pran Phone Calls. I start by asking Patrick what his earliest memories of phone phreaking were.
When I was a kid, War Games is like the second movie I ever remember going to the theater and seeing. I think Cody, our older sister, took me. I think you were too little. But the first movie being E.T., I remember. But then the next year, 83, was War Games. And there was something about that, just the whole tone of that movie. Throughout the movie, he's doing tricky little things where he's recording the little DTMFs from the door that he goes to, little buttons, and then he's able to. And there was something something about that made me go like, wow, it was just really interesting to me as a young child. And then of course the scene where he goes to the pay phone, and he finds an old Pop Top can, he finds a can and he finds a Pop Top from a can. If you guys know what that is. Before the soda cans looked like they do now, they had a thing that was just removable.
The ring pull.
Yeah. So he uses that to. He sticks that inside the receiver or something, and then he's able to make a call somehow, or he's able to. I think he uses it in lieu of the actual, because he takes out the actual little speaker like thing in there, but he's able to talk loud enough that they can hear him. I don't know. It's really weird, but as a kid, I remember thinking like, "Oh my God, this is like the coolest thing ever!" Like that this guy is. He's hacking into all this stuff with a computer, and then he's able to do this with a phone. And anyway, just a very cool movie. I remember thinking it was. So I think that might have kind of piqued my interest in doing, what you might consider hacking or just trying to exploit, electronics to do things they're not supposed to. On the subject of technology and stuff too, as kids, we had I remember getting the little Casio. It's a little tiny Casio PT1 keyboard, and thinking that was pretty cool that you could program it and stuff. And I remember we got those for our birthdays are close together, and we each got one. And Cody, I don't know if you remember, we had one of our uncles was over, and he figured out some way. And this was not in the instruction booklet that I know of. He figured out some way to manipulate the keyboard so that your recorded song would either play backwards or it did something strange that it wasn't supposed to do. And he was like, "Hey, look what I figured out." And then he showed it. It was like you held down a couple of buttons for a couple of seconds and stuff like that. And I remember being pretty amazed at that when I was a kid. And I think a couple of my dad's brothers had actually, I found this out later, that they'd worked for NASA. Yeah, I remember him, the keyboard was new, and he just sat there and messed, and I don't know if he just sat there and pressed buttons until he figured it out. I don't know, but that was the kind of stuff we kind of did as kids when we saw any kind of a little electronic device or something, especially in public. We would just go over and start pressing buttons and messing with it and let's see if we can cause this thing to glitch. And then sometimes you would get to administrator menus or something like that by accident, and, of course, as kids, we didn't know what we were doing. We were just kind of like, oh, wow, look at that, or something. But, so I guess that the whole, Carl, when you originally, asked if we would be interested in doing this, I was kind of like, we don't really have that. We're not really hackers. We don't really have that background. We don't do this. We've never done anything maliciously or tried to get over on somebody or steal money or anything like that. But then when I started thinking about it, I was like, well, yeah, but we've done stuff like this our whole lives. Just kind of mess around with something to see what we could do, get it to do that it wasn't supposed to do. But the other, or one more thing I remember as a kid was somebody at our school or somebody we knew, a neighborhood kid, was like, "Hey, do you guys know about this phone ring back, like ring test number you can dial?" And we were like, "No." And if you dialed 41411, you would get a busy signal, and then you would hang up, and then your phone would just start ringing. And it was like just a test to see if your line was running. So we were like, of course we thought it was funny. We would do that and get our parents to pick up thinking there was a call. If you picked it up, you just got a busy signal. But then I don't know how, it was either Cody or I were messing around one day with a phone, and we figured out, if you dialed 410447, you got your ring back, but it was a different pattern, a different ring pattern. Like it was, instead of ring, just your standard rings, it would be ring, ring, ring. And then we started dialing, we dialed 410448, 449, 450. And we found about 6 different like ring patterns. And I remember as a kid, we both just thought that was really cool. We were like, wow, we figured out something here. So when you're a kid, go ahead.
Sorry, is there for some reason I associate that with Prince or a Prince song from the
Prince?
80s. I have no idea why, but was there something
was
to do
probably
with that?
Prince Purple Rain had probably just come out at that time. I don't know. No idea.
I don't know. Maybe somebody listening knows some kind of
this
connection.
was
Maybe
this would have been like around 1984.
Maybe it has nothing to do with anything.
That's funny. That's got to
For
be
some
like a
reason, I
childhood.
associate us doing that with Prince. Maybe I just heard it on the radio.
I'm sure you did at that time back then. So yeah, there was that, and then around that same time, kind of discovering what 800 numbers were. There was a Ghostbusters hotline you could call, and it was just a recorded message with the Ghostbusters. And if you called during the day, it was busy a lot of time. But
it's in the movie, in the commercial. If you call the number, I think is that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Or,
I still remember
or did they
the
give
number.
Out a 555.
In the movies, it was always 555. But this was an actual I don't know where this was printed. This was another friend of ours, a neighborhood friend that was like, you guys know the Ghostbusters line, right?
So at the time, we thought it was like a legitimate thing, like they would do now. They would have an actual number to promote a movie or TV show, and you call in, it plays something, But thinking about it now, that was probably not. It was probably, wasn't it just a recording of the commercial from the movie or something?
It was either that or it was just a recording that they made for people who called in. I don't know. I don't remember.
So
I just
was
remember
it an
thinking
official
thing
that they made?
Yes. Yeah.
Or was it like a hackers set it up or something?
No, I think the movie company did it.
There has been some more recent cases of that. I think in Terminator Genesis, I think Cole's Drapes, which is the T1 T100, he obviously went out to fallow and he had to retrain and reskill and do something else, and he was doing drapes and curtains. Okay. And the telephone number on the side of that apparently was if you rang that, it would go actually through to Arnold Schwarzenegger with a a voice message going, "Hi, you're through to Carl's Drapes. Leave a message. We won't leave you hanging."
That's great.
So that's quite a. I think it's quite a thing in films to have like Easter egg telephone numbers that. In the UK we had there was 0800 and then about 7 digits, random digits of your choice, and you could actually ring businesses up in the United States.
Okay.
Yeah, and we used to do that from payphones, and used to ring up and used to get very very bemused people just picking up the phone and to school kids. And like we'd ask them questions like, "Do you know what the World Cup is?" and things like that, and and just get generally upset that they didn't, and then hang up, which was very, very, very bizarre. But yeah, it was. You wouldn't find anything on. There was no internet at the time, and you wouldn't understand how you found out about these things, and you wouldn't understand why they were there, because there must have been a reason for it, but. Yeah, there were a couple of exploits that we used to have. And also, if you went to a payphone and you just lifted the receiver up and didn't make a call, the dial tone would time out, and these recorded messages would come up, and they'd come up and say things like, the other person has cleared, do, the other person has cleared, do, and you'd wondered what was going on, you you wondered if it's sort of like what on earth they were going on about. And I did my work experience for British Telecom, and I asked them, and they didn't know either. They just they basically said on my first day that it's teas, toilets, and telephones, and it was in that order, and that's
okay.
all I knew.
Right.
But it's quite interesting with that. So were they your first experiences really of sort of like circuit bending or exploiting things to find out that your telephone could do a lot more than just make regular calls on?
Yeah, definitely. Just playing around the phone with the kid playing around the phone when we were kids, and just trying to, just like you said, trying to figure something out, trying to get it to do something it wasn't supposed to, or like I said, the Ghostbusters hotline was, I think, the first time we realized, it's a toll-free number, but I don't think we really knew what that meant even. And we had a friend who came over, and one day, and he was a very phone centric kid, if you want to whatever that means, but he was always messing with the phone, and he was always calling his mom for some reason. And he's kind of a weird kid, but it was kind of funny. But so one day we're sitting there, and he's like, he was looking at a cassette tape I had, and it was Greg Kihn. Do you remember Greg Kihn, the guy who did the Jeopardy song back in the 80s? My love's in jeopardy. Do you remember that song? Anybody?
I can't help you there, Patrick, I'm afraid.
Yeah, he also had what was his other song that they play way too much on the radio?
And so we start looking through it. Yeah. So we start looking through the insert on this cassette, and it's like, the record company is like in Berkeley, California or something. And so this kid's just like, I'm gonna call Greg Kihn. I'm gonna call the artist, the guy. And so his kids were like, okay, whatever. And so he picks up the phone, and he dials like information, 401. And then he gets this phone number. He says, I'm looking for the number of Greg Kihn in Berkeley, California. So he gets this number, and he calls it. And I'm not even sure. We weren't even paying attention to him really that much, but didn't really think about it. And he was like, yeah, somebody answered and blah, blah, blah. I don't even remember what happened. But all I know is, a few weeks or a month later, parents get the phone bill. And they're like, did you guys call California? And we're like, what? And they're like, when you call, other states, it's long distance, you get an extra charge. So we were like, what? So we got in trouble for that. And then we had to explain that he was trying to call a rock star, our friend. We were like, yeah, Mike did it. So that was the first time we realized, like, if you're going to call long distances, yeah, there's an extra charge, that sort of thing. So that was, kind of, we were just kind of like learning slowly how the phone system worked and all that. A few years later, we were again bored during the summertime. School was out, and we noticed that, at least, here in the States, and I'm sure it's similar there, I don't know, but you have your local phone numbers, you have a 3-digit prefix, and then 4 numbers, so we realized at some point, like, we knew that, your other little towns within our state, had different 3-digit prefixes, but for some reason, if you called those, you get this little message that says you have to first dial a 1 or a 0, but it never really occurred to us to do that. So we just, one day were like, hey, what happens if we dial a 1? And, we're not dialing a different area code. We're still in our area code, which is 405 here. So we just started dialing these. We would figure out these random, 3-digit prefixes and dial a 1 ahead of them. And then we started getting these little rural towns with these kind of hillbillies, these people would be like, hello, and we're like, oh, wow, I wonder where we just called, and not only that, but Cody, if you remember, like the ring sound you would get was not the standard like ring sound. It would be like almost like a buzzing, like it was old school phone systems, like, just these weird.
It sounded like an analog noise going, through the phone line.
Yeah. So
like that,
we ended up
much like a. So, some of them we were amused as kids because we thought they sounded like farting.
So we were like we knew like, okay, if we dial 1352 and in 4 digits, we'll get this kind of ring and that kind of ring. So we were kind of doing that for a while. Again, not realizing that we were dialing local long distance, which was still long distance. So about a month later, my parents got another phone bill. They're like, did you call Verdon, Oklahoma? What? Who do you know in Verdon, Oklahoma? And we're like, nobody. We didn't realize that. And we were like kind of pranking these people too, sort of. I think we were mostly just hanging out. But the other thing that interested us too was you would get a different variety of error messages when you'd get a number that was unused or whatever. You would, get like these different, and they still do this now where they have a little code at the end. It'll say, or like, for example, you get a thing that'd say the number you've dialed in, and it'd be like a guy with an accent, number you've dialed in, Mayfield, Oklahoma is no longer in service.
Turley, Oklahoma. It'd be like, the guy that recorded it you could tell was from there,
From the little rural
the number
area.
you dialed don't work, all right?
Goodbye.
So there were some of them that were, we'll get to that later probably, but yeah, we'll get to that later.
Anyway, so that was entertaining to us, but then it came at a price. We got in trouble again, and then I guess it finally clicked that like okay, if you dial a 1 before anything but 800-800, it's the parents are going to know, so we can't do that anymore. So that was we kind of went back to just dialing random 800 numbers, just making up numbers and 1-800 numbers with toll-free numbers to see what we would get. I also remember like dialing numbers off of TV, when they'd be selling a amazing laser beam wristwatch or something, and we would dial in those numbers just to go, look at this, we're doing something, we're making a long distance call and we're not paying for it. So it's something fun about that when you're a kid. It's exciting, but just dialing the random numbers too, you would get these
weird.
They
would always
say
any commercial with an 800 number, they would always say there's no charge. This is toll free.
Toll free.
It seemed like a big deal at the time.
Yeah, I remember we found this convention center in Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, I think. Yeah, and it had this jaunty little tune on it that just kind of amused us. So we would call it, and it was just a recording every time. It would just give the answer. It would give the hours of the convention center, and maybe they'd say what was coming up and stuff. But it had this little 80s dum 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 da 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 da, and then it had a little jingle too. Like there was a woman singing a little jingle. Do you remember what that was, Cody? Can you sing a bar of that?
I don't know if it'd be very interesting. But...
No, I'm kidding. You don't have to. I'm just joking. Oh, okay. But so I remember calling.
We didn't even know the words because it was so hard to understand anyway.
Yeah, it's music coming over an old school phone. But so there were numbers like that. We would call 800 numbers and and
every once in a while it would randomly someone would answer. Maybe if you called at the correct time.
They would be like, "Oh my God!" Of
course, we would just like. I just wanted to hear the recording of that crappy song. We'd just hang up probably. But.
Right. So
we did a lot of that for a while, and then it progressed into.
Well, we started finding these toll-free numbers that would have these voicemail systems, that we, and the first one that, and we just thought it was funny. We would leave joke messages and stuff, or, I don't even know if we were doing that at that point. That was kind of another thing we would play with the voicemail system to the point that we would figure out, you can keep appending to the message and stuff like that. So we would end up, in some cases, recording what would become an entire like little show, as a message, and leave it for people. And just the funny thing about this is just like an
improv random comedy type of thing.
And we would just think about like, I wonder what this person is thinking when they get to work on Monday and they hear this, like there's a couple of kids just like playing music and just,
and we should say that it was kind of the polar opposite as far as voicemails compared to now. Like back then it was like, we've got this voicemail system that's, it's probably very expensive and high tech, and by God, you're going to check your voicemails. You're going to listen to every message you got because it's so fucking cool. Sorry, can we curse on this?
Of course
show?
You can.
Okay. I might accidentally. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So playing around with these voicemail systems, and that turned into like, what happens if you press this button? What happens? And then, of course, it was, enter your password. Oh, okay. Let's see if we can figure this out. And, a lot of times, of course, we wouldn't, we would just try a couple times, and, of course, it hangs up on you. But this one that we had found, I think there were voicemail boxes that you just pressed the star key or whatever, and the people didn't have passwords, so you just got right into their voicemail box. You're just there, and then like I think that first time, just going like, wait a minute.
That's sorry to interrupt, but that's another
Go ahead.
sign of the bygone era that I you just reminded me of that. There were voicemail systems where that was maybe even a default, if not an option, to just not have a password on your to get into your voicemail.
Never
maybe
do
that's
that.
still maybe that's still an option now, but
I doubt it.
People don't really even use it now, but in recent years, I think that just seems crazy to not have a password on something.
Yeah. So
on anything.
The specific voicemail system I'm talking about was I remember it was like a mutual fund, like company or something. And when I figured this out, I told my school friend, and Cody, I don't even think this is long enough ago. I don't think if you were involved in this stuff yet. Maybe a little bit. But
I just knew about it because my older brother was doing something cool, and what seemed very illegal to me at the time.
So I told my friend about it, my school friend, and I was like, he came over or something, and either that or we just talked on the phone, and I gave him the numbers and stuff, and he was like, okay, check this out. And so we were like, we went in and we just created passwords on these voicemail boxes, a couple of voicemail boxes on this thing. And we decided that like, at this point, I think I was about 12 years old. So we were like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to both have these voicemail, boxes that we can communicate back and forth on. And we'd figured out, of course, how to do that and everything. And if we want to like sneak out of the house and go meet at night, and even if we want to go like toilet paper this kid's house or something, we can use this system. So he was like, and we were like, yeah, cool. We're doing cool stuff here or something. And so he got like some of our other friends involved. So we had like 4 or 5 of these voicemail boxes. We just like totally took them over on this thing. And, we had our friends on them too. And the stupid thing was I'd written a bunch of this stuff down and the phone numbers and stuff like that. So what ended up happening was this didn't go on for very long. And then, of course, it wasn't long after this before this company, they figured it out and reset their system or whatever. And of course, as kids, we were like, oh, this is a big deal. But our dad, or, Cody and our dad, was, and probably even still is to this day, kind of a detective type. He'll snoop around and stuff. So he found my piece of paper with the numbers and all this stuff, and I remember I had written on there because we were like a club. We had these voicemail boxes and whatever plans we were going to do, we didn't even do. But we were the TP club. We were going to go toilet paper people, So he finds this piece of paper that says TP club, and then he starts like grilling me about it. Like, what is this TP club? And he's like, I called this number and I heard your voice on the thing. And we were so dumb. We shouldn't have done it. But, and so got in trouble for that. So that was over. And I was kind of like, I got enough trouble, or he got, he was like, you could be prosecuted for this or something, which, they're going to send some 12-year-olds to jail because they messed around with somebody's voicemail. But, I just remember at that point, like going like, okay, no, that was a bad idea. So, I think the lesson we kind of learned there, and, I think I told Cody what went on and stuff. And a lesson we learned there is like, if you're going to hack into one of these, don't just take somebody's voicemail that, don't make it obvious like we did. If you even want to call that hacking, no passwords, that's not much hacking done there, but,
years later, like 5 maybe years later, I think I randomly, because at this point, you got in trouble, so we were like, oh, we can't ever call that number again. And then probably 5 years later, I called it. Or am I mixing this up with a different company? But you could, or maybe both. You could we got into like a master voicemail box.
Yeah, this was different. Yeah, so this was different. So
you could just make mailboxes.
Yeah, you could just create your own. And that was, I only ever came across that a couple of times where there was an actual master, there's actual master account that via the interface over the phone, you could create. You
could make.
Yeah, it's like that doesn't, that's, if I'm like somebody who's concerned about security, that's like huge because like you should only be able to create those like on I would say on a computer terminal or something like that back in the 80s or whatever. But so it was we continued at that point. I think I kind of got you involved with the calling 800, and so we did that sort of thing. And I remember we thought it was really cool too that you could call 800 numbers from payphones without paying for it. So we would do a lot of that, just messing around. But it was a couple of years later that
on that subject, there was a payphone at a couple of different schools that we went to that, like on my lunch break, I don't know if you did this, Patrick, but I would regularly do this because I was bored. Call these 800 numbers from the payphone and mess with them, or sometimes, for whatever reason, use it to our advantage to be calling it not from our home phone. But
once again,
if it was toll free, you could just call it from a payphone.
The same kind of situation where we're finding these and we're just pressing random numbers and combinations of numbers just to figure out, how is it that we can access, administrator options and stuff like that. Some of them. And it got to where we got familiar enough with lots of these different systems that like we would know, okay, this one you have to press this or that, just by the voice that would come on. You could tell the type of system it was. And even in some cases it would be like, we'd hear this. There was a woman that would come on. We called her Virginia because it was based on this.
You want to go into why we called her that?
I don't know. It's not that important. I don't think. So I think we started calling her Virginia later because when I was a little older, I worked at a fast food restaurant, and my manager there was this like 60-year-old woman named Virginia, and she was just awful. She was just an awful, mean person. And she would just like,
how you meet a few of those in your lifetime, I think, and she was one of them for Patrick.
Yeah, she was just
an
terrible,
awful person.
Yeah, she was just, and it wasn't just to me, other employees, but she was, I don't know. But the funny thing about her was, she had this voice that was like this, and she would be like, you need to do this, and you need to
militant.
do that. Yeah, very. But then when she was dealing with customers and stuff, she'd be like, she would talk like this. Hi, welcome, I'm Virginia.
I'm so friendly.
I'm a friendly lady. So this voicemail system had a voice like that. And we knew these voicemail systems well enough to know that if we heard Virginia, that, don't even mess with this one because it's a pain in the ass. Like,
that was one of the very common ones. Yeah, and the famous line that it says, and you can still find them today. Sorry, you're having trouble. Please call back when you... What was it, Patrick?
She was
call
so
back when you can remember. One of them said, there was one that was not her, but it said, call back when you can remember your passcode. As if it was being sarcastic at you. Like,
yeah.
We know
Some
you're
of them were
trying to
very
guess
sarcastic.
this passcode. Call back when you can remember it, you piece of shit.
So, yeah.
And that was their parting words. Like the Virginia one was, sorry you're having trouble.
Sorry you're having trouble.
I think that was a different one, actually, that said exiting the system. But anyway. Yeah, they had these like snooty recordings that when it was going to hang up on you and it would just piss you off.
Yeah. So we, over the years, over a period of, 5 years or so there, we would just play with these so much that we knew them. We got to where we knew them inside and out. We knew that, in some cases we knew what the default passwords were. If we found a voicemail that was unused, so we could take those boxes, and we never took the ones that had somebody on them unless,
Yeah, we, like Patrick said, we kind of learned from our earlier experience. Like we knew that if we drew
made
too
it
much
obvious.
attention, then
Yeah,
we wouldn't be able to call and...
If you were taking a mailbox that's occupied, then somebody who would be screening that would soon alert somebody that someone's squatting on their system.
Yep. They would know.
Yeah.
So the other kind of funny thing about these systems too is, at some point during all this, we would, we were involved in prank calling and stuff too. We would just do silly stuff. So, we figured out, not only were we dialing numbers and trying to hack into voicemail systems, but we had the old school phones, some of the old school phones that you can unscrew the receiver, a la War Games.
Yeah.
And we had figured out at some point that you can take
Patrick, is that where you got the idea to do that? Was War Games to unscrew the thing, or did you just figure that out?
Maybe not specifically, but yes, that I think that's probably what gave me the idea. You could unscrew that, unscrew the phone and do things with the receiver. Yeah. So I had figured out that if you unscrew the receiver, you take out the little speaker thing, and you've got those two tabs there, right? The two little metal pieces sticking up in the receiver.
Yeah, copper. So
if you take the male end of an RCA cable, the RCA plug, and you could kind of press it in there just so that the negative part of the RCA cable is touching one of the tabs, and the positive and the sort of the male part of it is touching the other one. You had a direct line into the phone. Like, you could not only record audio perfectly, like wherever that RCA, you send that RCA cable into a boom box or something that has an input on it, or a stereo, any kind of stereo system with an RCA in. You could not only could you record, but you could play stuff, and it would go right into the phone, just like you were a radio station, if you were playing music or something like that. So we figured that out.
It would be really clear for them on their end. I mean, it would be, like Patrick said, it would sound professional. It would sound like we were a radio station calling them or something, because it was so clear on the line, as clear as it possibly could be at the time,
Oh yeah, because
So-
you got no latency or any like attenuation, because when you're talking into a microphone, you lose a bit and you get a bit of background. If you've got the line in, I guess that's like unadulterated pure signal.
Yeah, I mean, it was compressed or whatever you would call it, but still it was, for the time, very clear.
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah.
we could play music and stuff, and they would hear it pretty clearly and
Music or
loudly.
any recordings of our voices, and that became we would use that to we would do weird stuff, like we would voice our own fake like voicemail system thing. Like I would do the prompts, and since I was like really young and my voice hadn't even changed, I could kind of do like a sort of a female sounding voice. And I'd be like, your time and message check is, and we would just like call random people to see how nosy they were.
yeah. So there were
Like, press 1 to
there
hear
were
your
voice-
messages now. Yeah.
there were voicemail systems where you could set it up to call you and let you know when you had a message, or everyone, at certain times it would call you and give you your messages. So we were, imitating that basically, and we would call people and then listen to them press buttons to be nosy and listen to what they thought was someone else's messages.
We would have a pre-recorded
just like-
message
Yeah,
ready
so we
to
would
go
have
that was
fake
just
voicemails that were ridiculous, and we'd just see how long this person would stay on the line and listen to them, and press buttons to listen to them.
Yeah.
We'd usually record this too.
Oh yeah,
for,
yeah. We'd be
own
recording
amusement to listen to
with another tape deck or whatever, because we had figured out that whole thing. Another thing that kind of inspired this that I just thought about was the whole Ferris Bueller thing. If you ever seen Ferris Bueller, where he's tricking people with recordings, like answering
Apparently,
machine.
Matthew Broderick made quite
Yes.
an impact on us.
He did.
Yeah.
About
Mathew Broderick. Wow, I never thought about that. Yeah, we owe a lot to him. So
Maybe not the Christmas film, but yeah. Yeah,
Probably.
it's so yeah. In Ferris Bueller's Day Off, he was he had the synthesizer, wasn't he? And he was coughing into it. And yeah. That was it.
it was the emulator. He had the emulator synthesizer. Yeah. So anyway, we would do these. We were having fun too. At the same time, we were kind of figuring out how to hack these systems. The figuring out the phone, being able to pipe music in and record at the same time, record phone conversations, clearly, gave birth to a few years later. I was like, I had taken apart enough phones and messed with the phones enough that I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go to the store and get, I'm just gonna go to Radio Shack and get an RCA and so I did that, like a little RCA end I could splice in. So I basically just bought a phone and cracked it open and just soldered in a little RCA cable little RCA output input, and then cut a little hole there, and so we called it the Recordo phone. So now you just had a little RCA cable you just plug in, and you could.
The hole that you cut, quote unquote, was taking the soldering pin and melting through the plastic. A hole big enough
just
to get the cord through.
Well, it just had to be a tiny little thing.
Breathe in the
We only
fumes.
Yeah, I can
we only
smell that
breathed
from
a
here.
we only breathed a little bit of deadly vapor.
Yeah, one time you were soldering something and you were having me hold the wires while you did it, and you burned my arm, and I still have a scar from it on my forearm.
Well,
By the way,
it's a price you pay when you're into phone freaking.
we should probably mention the thing that might have been. No, I think you purchased this at a what you would call a home improvement type store now that's not around anymore. If I remember correctly. The thing that you would suction onto the phone, which you sometimes
those
saw in
things,
movies and stuff.
Yeah,
So like we had that before.
It's like a little.
You did
It's a
all
little
this.
suction cup that you just stick on the phone, and then it has a
On the
little
back of the
3.5 millimeter
speaker.
Oh, does that pick the vibration up? Does it? Or is that what?
Yeah, and
Yeah, it would record. I mean, it was a microphone basically that would just.
You know what it was
And it
really
was
like. It was
sort of-
kind of like a guitar, like a thing in a guitar pickup, like a little. It's just a little round piece of
Yeah.
metal in it. That's all it was down inside there, So I'd taken those apart too. But
A bug.
And and it
Pretty
just went
much.
to 3.5 millimeter.
Yeah. And you just plug that
So
in.
we
And
would
those things,
record like somehow our
were not
parents
good.
bought that for us as pretty young kids.
I think
from-
they just
I think
had
it was from a home improvement store
because they had a business or something, and they wanted to be able to record clients
okay.
making requests or something. I think that was theirs, and we
Okay.
just took it.
But we ended
I don't
up
think
being
they-
the ones that used it.
and it wasn't very good. It sucked, and that's kind of
Yeah, the audio was kind of quiet, and then there was like all this interference noise that was like digitally.
It would pick up. That's why I say it was kind of like a guitar pickup, because it would pick up it would pick up interference from like any nearby electronic devices. You would hear like little buzzes and
You get the
stuff
hum
like
and the
that.
buzz and
Yep.
the impedance
Yeah.
coming from other things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So,
we improved on that by Patrick soldering in this thing.
RCA
Anyway.
input output.
That's the best connection you're going to get. Definitely.
Do you call them RCA inputs there? where you are,
I think RCA or AV.
Well, another thing that we kind of started doing too was, another part of something we'd always done going back to when, I was probably 7, 8, 9 years old. Is we would record stuff. I don't know what the official name for doing this is. I guess you would call it, I don't know. Would you call it mashups or some shit? I would do stuff where I would be recording songs on the radio, and I would purposely be pausing and doing weird things to the tape. And when you would play it back, it'd be like you had a totally different song, because you would cut out every fourth beat or something like that. So we'd kind of been messing around with audio clips and stuff like that for years. Stuff that people are doing professionally now. When we were kids, we were like, wow, we could be if we just kept doing that, we'd be like DJs or something, I guess. I don't know. But another thing we would do is we would record all these odd, using the recordophone, patent pending. We would Cody mainly would do these. So we would have all these recordings with these weird error messages and stuff, and Cody would splice them all together and make a little song out of it. Like just splice bits of it together, and then he would even put it over like Herbie Hancock's Rocket or something, and it would just be these weird.
Yeah, that was the most common background.
Yeah, back then
music I would use, but I
and
would
then
try to get it on beat with the music. I can send you. I have that as a.
See if you can find that right now
somewhere.
Yeah,
No, but I do have it. If you want to, me to send it.
I'd include that in the show.
Of the operator disconnected recordings I did. It's not very good, but you have to remember
for somebody who is
cassette tapes.
Yeah,
Don't
I'd love
link
to.
to it.
Yes, send it. I will include it.
We're sorry, your call did not go through. 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 Will you please call again? Call again. Call again. Repeating. Dial again. Dial again. Please consult the number you dialed and dial again. Your directory is not working. We're sorry, your call cannot help you. Please check your operator or call recording. This is your operator. We're sorry, your operator cannot help you. This is not a working number. This is a recording. The number you have dialed, this is a recording. I'm sorry, the service is not correct. Please hang up. Please hang up. Please hang up. Try again. Hang up. Hang up. Please hang up. Try again. Or call the correct number.
We did a thing we called it the Hello Festival. It probably predated the operator recordings. We'd just call a whole bunch, just a ton of people and record them saying hello and hang up, and then just put
and then
it
make
together.
a song out of it. Yeah. Them like,
Yeah.
hello, hello, hello.
Just people saying
hello.
hello.
It'd be just different. It was just funny to us, the different ways people answered the phone. So anyway, there was a lot of that kind of silliness going on too. We would record all this stuff. We had tapes and tapes of this stuff. We would record this phone crap we would do. And I guess getting into getting into the, you talk about phreaking and people circumventing long distance charges and stuff like that. I had figured out, we had this. So at this point, like, I don't, during the middle of, in the middle of a couple of, maybe 3 years we were doing this, we'd gotten good enough that we had several of these voicemail systems. I'd say maybe 4 or 5, 800 numbers. And we had hacked some part of them in some way because we'd figured out that, a lot of them, the default mailbox numbers or password is 1234, or maybe all zeros or something like that. So, but the one that I found that Cody was talking about it earlier, where you could actually create your own voicemail boxes, we were always kind of aware that, like,
you're giving inside tips here, Patrick.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. Don't give that away.
No, don't. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No. But so this one, that one voicemail system, like, we were always kind of aware that we could possibly, we might be able to get in trouble for doing this, because we were always kind of, if we did take over a voicemail box, we always wanted it to be like one that was just blank that nobody used, and we like Cody was saying earlier, don't make it so it's not obvious or that you've even been there or done anything. So when I found this one where I could actually create the voice, the boxes, I was like, oh, this is great. So I created 2 of them, like, way up out of the number range. You know what I mean? Like, your number ranges were, could be anywhere from 1,000 to 4. The voicemail box numbers when you dialed in. You got to dial your voicemail box number first, and then you go get into it from there. Anyway, so I created these 2, and I had a friend who was going on vacation out of state. And I was like, dude, check this out. Like, here, just, call this 800 number from any payphone. And, here's your voicemail, here's your password, and here's how you do this. So I set him up. So he was on vacation, like, in Colorado somewhere. And we communicated over the summer, just for free. We weren't dialing long distance. So, I guess you call that kind of illegal or whatever. But so this went on for quite a while, like over the summer. And then one day, and this is when, anyway, I'll just say this. One day I'm sitting there, and my dad, it was me and my dad and Cody there. And I think our mom was working or something. It was in the evening after school, or we're sitting there watching TV or something like that. My dad leaves to go get dinner, and phone rings, and this was before caller ID, so you just answered whatever. So I'm like, hello, and I just turn white because I'm hearing the voice of the guy who is on this voicemail system that I've hacked and taken over the past summer. Like, he's on the main greeting, he picks it up. Hello, this is blah 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 company. And like, it's,
hey, by the way, this guy
calls.
This guy was very. It was one of those systems where it allows you to just record a lot of the prompts, if not all of. Was it all of them or just some of them, Patrick?
So I mean, once you got into a voicemail box, it was the standard, whatever it was. But yeah, his voice was on like most of the prompts.
So the main one, and speaking of sorry you're having trouble, he had one that was like, you have made too many errors, and we will be disconnecting now. It was something. It started off with a big,
It was like heavy, comic book guy from The Simpsons. Yeah.
It was like a deep breath. The beginning of the recording was like, if I remember, am I correct about that?
Yes.
Worst that voicemail ever.
Yes. Yeah, it was. Yeah. So the guy called.
So anyway. So he calls, and I'm like, holy shit, this has never happened. I'm like, I was like losing I'm like, I'm a young teenager at this point. I think I was about 14 or something. And this guy just calls, and I'm like, and he's like, hello. And he sounds, it's the guy. And I'm just like, and he's just like, yes, we've been getting a lot of calls from this number. And at this point, my friend was no longer on vacation, so we weren't really using it. He was back, right? So he was like, been getting a lot of calls from this number, and I think someone's been playing around with my voicemail system. And I was just like, huh? He's like, and he's like, what did he ask? He was just like, now, have you been calling my voicemail? And I was just like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, well, are there any younger children there? And I was like, oh, I have a little brother.
Well,
and he was like,
he named off. He mentioned that they were in California, and then he starts naming off like, it's like, I'm looking at my records here, and he's like
phone
naming
records.
our hometown and the phone number, our home phone number. He's like, he's just like naming it off, blah blah blah,
like, here it is.
Oklahoma,
Yes,
and the phone number over, and he's like saying it over and over at you.
He's like, here it is, July 19th, 7:19
over
p.m.
and over and over.
July 19th, 8:20 p.m. July night, because we call that like
shitting
nonstop.
your pants.
It's like just white. I mean, like all the blood was out of my, I was just like,
I was
oh my god.
standing there too. Like I was standing there.
Well, you probably
I
knew something was
what
wrong by
going
my
on.
my expression.
Yeah, I immediately knew what it was, just from what you were, just sort of hearing him and what you were saying.
So the guy, and I'm just like, well, I don't know. I just played it off. Of course, like I had no idea what he was talking about. And he's like, well, you better tell your younger brother or whoever's been doing this that we will, we will pursue legal action if this continues to happen. So, and he's going into this whole dissertation, and then as he's doing this, our dad is coming in the door with food, that
The
he's picked up.
aforementioned nosy detective dad.
Yeah, father. So,
that
and I
caught
know
us that caught Patrick before with
a couple of times. A couple of times, he busted us doing phone
at this
stuff.
point.
But so he's coming in the door. I can hear him opening the door, and he's rustling. He's got the takeaway bags and stuff.
And he was also known for, if you were on the phone, like yelling, "Who is that? Who are you talking to?"
Who are you talking to? So anyway,
Maybe not that angrily.
yeah, but he just had to know, and looking back, it was, he didn't mean, he meant well, of course. He didn't want us to be going to jail for phone crimes, but anyway, so he's coming in, and I just know that if he sees me on the phone, he's going to demand to know who it is. And I've already told this guy, like, my parents aren't home, So I'm just like, okay. And the guy's, well, and I'll be watching, and you better not be calling anymore. And I just get this guy. I'm like hanging up the phone as my dad is walking, our dad is walking into the house, and I'm just like, and then I told Cody everything that happened. And then that was like, at that point, I was just like, we are done doing this. Like, that scared the hell out of me. Like, and the thing we learned there was something that we maybe suspected, but didn't realize, is that when you call,
wasn't true.
yeah, when you call a toll-free number, since they're paying for the call, they have a list of people who call. Like, it's like they know.
Yeah.
So this guy had a giant list of just all the times we had called and all this stuff, and
He probably named off like 372 calls,
yeah, over the period of the summer. And so
This cost me $500.
something, man. It was crazy. I was just like, I was never like so scared. We're just kind of dumb when you think about it now as an adult. Like, much scarier things now than that guy. But as a kid, I'm just like, oh my god, I can't. And then I remember telling you, and you were like, what, Cody? It's like, how could this happen? And so. For like a couple of years, we just like abandoned all of it. Like any of the stuff that we were like, we were like, no more 800 numbers. Like no more hacking
And no
voicemail.
more
On 800
voicemail.
numbers. We just didn't.
Too, that I eventually broke.
So we just
And
we just
only
didn't
prank
do that.
called
Yeah.
for a while after that.
Yeah. Some other little side notes too, unrelated. We had found in our dialing 800 numbers, we'd found this thing called Car Talk, which was a railroad car tracker.
yeah.
You put in the number on the side of the box, the car or whatever, and it would tell you where it was. And that was kind of neat.
It utilized the T9 type of thing where you put in, you press 2 3 times for C, or
Yep.
press 2 2 times for B.
Yeah.
That was where we learned that, was like back in 1987 or something.
Yeah.
Because that's how you would put in the
89,
card,
something like that.
the cart number or whatever.
There was that. There was
and it would tell you where this railroad car was, you know, this freight.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting. But it was an electronic voice. But Patrick can probably explain it better than me. It's a voice people are familiar with, probably.
It's just back then your standard computer generated voice. So it sounded like what does it sound like? What could you compare it to?
It was
today?
the same exact voice. I could compare it to something that
Stephen Hawking.
people have heard.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's like a Stephen Hawking voice.
Or speak and spell.
Yeah. Right in between those two.
Yeah.
The thing, something that people might have heard is Sky Pager. It was the exact same.
I was going to bring that up.
voice.
Yeah. There's a song by Sir Mix-a-Lot. There's a song by Sir Mix-a-Lot from 1989 called Beepers.
Are you familiar with it, Carl?
I'm not familiar with that one, but I shall bring it up. Yeah, I
So
should get that.
in the song, it's about pagers, basically beepers, and you would use this pager service called Sky Pager. You dial up a number, and it's just like, just imitating the voices, basically like "Welcome to Sky Pager," like
Welcome
please
to
enter your
Car
message.
Talk. It was the same exact.
Car Talk it was the same system.
We were familiar. I think we were familiar with both before we ever heard the song.
Yeah.
Welcome to Sky Pager. Welcome to Car Talk. Sorry, but you have made more than 3 errors. That was the angry hang up from that computer AI voice.
Oh,
Sorry, it must have been Canadian.
There was a French remember there was a French Canadian version of.
You could. I think.
Is it this one?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Beepers.
I thought your pot pie was ready for a second there.
Not pork pie tonight. We don't have pork pie on a Saturday.
So you'll hear a Sky Pager. There you go. There it is.
Yeah, that voice. Yeah. So, like I was saying, we were familiar with Car Talk and Sky Pager, and it was the same computer voice. And then we heard that song come out, and we're like, oh, somebody sampled this,
You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service. If you feel you have reached this recording in error, please check the number and try your call again.
We had this answering machine, another, when we're talking about physical pieces of, electronics or whatever. We had this answering machine that used to be my parents'. It was broken.
You were mentioning the other languages. I think you could press a button and it would, and this may have been later on when I was still calling it. But it could tell you in French what the cars were.
No, it was kind of fun to make it do that. Yeah, I think, and we may have even that may have been.
I sort of learned some French just from messing with that, because it was like, if you made an error, it was like désolé,
désolé.
And then when it was hanging up, when it was telling you have made more than 3 errors, it was like system car talk.
System car talk. Yeah.
I would press a button that angered it, and it would just désolé. I'd keep doing it over and over.
Au revoir.
Okay. It never said that. I don't.
But the beepers.
It might have said bonjour.
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 The beepers song, that was a thing where I was like watching videos, and that came on sometime in '89, and I was like, I know that boy. And then I was like, how cool that they sampled. I don't think and then that may have started the whole thing where we started sampling sort of with cassettes, not really sampling, but making little songs. Is that beepers song, because we're like, oh wow, when we knew that artists use samples, but we never heard them sampling like little phone recordings and messages like that. So okay, so we were able to, we didn't fix it, but I messed with it enough that I found that if you had a weird little dial on it where it was like one setting was this and one setting was that but if you put it right between the two, it acted like a speakerphone, which was strange because it was like that. It wasn't a speakerphone. You know what I mean? When I say speakerphone, you could be
option on it.
So,
but it did have a speaker to play your messages.
Right. So in the days before we had what I call our recordo phone, our little our manipulated, we used that to actually record. We just put a microphone by that or something like that speaker. But so not much to that, but I know that was on the list because that was something that popped up. I was hacking of voicemail systems. We got to that point where we were like, no more of that, no more calling 800 numbers because it's obviously kind of like a collect call and they know. Some other stuff that kind of went on, and this to this day, I won't say like perplexes me. But it was really interesting. So at some point we realized that if we had a little stereo, little boombox type stereo made by a company called Sound Design, a little cheap radio. If you put it to a certain frequency on the FM band, you still got that? Wow. I mean, that thing has got to be 40 years old or 30 years.
Because it was thrown down and broken, but I still have it.
Okay. You still have a broken radio. Okay. So if you put it to a certain frequency on the radio, on the FM band.
It's from the 70s. So.
I can't even remember how we figured this out, but if you put it there, and then we realized that on an old school color TV, we had a little 13-inch color TV in our bedroom, and you could put it on a certain channel, and if you set that radio next to the TV on the right frequency, and then the TV on a specific channel, and then you messed with the little fine-tuning knobs. Are you familiar with that stuff, Carl? The little dial, the old dial TVs, and then you had a fine-tuning thing?
Yeah.
So you could get the audio from the TV to come through onto the radio. So, and that was kind of cool to us at the time because we were like, oh, we can record stuff directly off this one TV channel. For some reason it worked with. But the more interesting thing with that is
it worked with any TV channel if you had a radio on the correct frequency.
And that fine tuning, you had to mess with it, get it just right.
You had to tune it to where the screen was black or as black as possible, and then the audio would just come through as clearly as possible. There was always a little bit of a hint of like a high-pitched interference, but
so the sound carriers getting skewed and coming through the radio.
Yeah. So the more interesting,
and it was way more clear than just putting a cassette recorder or microphone up to the TV if you wanted to record a TV show or a TV theme song, in our case, a lot.
We were always in the market to find ways to, try to record something directly from the TV, without using the VCR or whatever. You know what I mean? I don't know why. We were just like audio from the TV. Oh, wow. That because there were no outputs or anything.
We didn't have a VCR
at that point.
Like our parents had a VCR, but we didn't in our...
That's right. We hadn't taken it over yet. Yeah. So anyway, so the more interesting part of that is we had always noticed if you on the UHF band, if you put the channel way up to the end of the your channels there, which was between 79 and 83, we noticed that those channels, you could see weird interference coming through. Like the static wasn't just your basic, your basic fuzz, your basic static. You would see the lines and it fluctuated and did different things. So we were like, I guess we got the idea, since we could hear audio from these, we get audio off TV channels. What is happening up here on these high channels? So we did that, and we were picking up people's cell phone calls.
Yes.
We were turning it. We would turn it, and we would pick up, and it was mainly, you know what it was? It was people leaving voicemails. Oddly enough, I don't know. Did we ever hear any live calls? Maybe we did, Cody.
I feel like we did, but we would also get like CB, like
the lower channels, like around 77, 78. We would pick up people's CBs, so it was like we were intercepting people's cell phone calls back in, the late 80s.
It was the old 800 band, I think, wasn't it? That was where they were.
And it was only with that TV and that radio. You had the sound came through the radio, Otherwise, you weren't going to get it. But
there was a story I like to tell people, and I'll make it very brief, but there was a day where the aforementioned dad, yeah, he was either angry at us for being, farting around on the phone or playing Nintendo or Atari or whatever, Super Nintendo, whatever it was at the time. So one day, and we had already figured this out before any of the other stuff with that sound design radio, if you put it on like 92 or something on the dial, you would just randomly pick up one of the UHF stations, syndicated TV stations. You would just get the audio no matter what.
Yeah.
So I could listen
something
to
about the way they were broadcasting. Yeah.
25. And our dad was like, "You need to get outside, play outside for a while." So
we were always messing around with electronics.
We went to this playground. That was at a school nearby, and I, took the sound design radio with me and just like plugged it in and like listened to the TV.
Just listened
and sat there.
What's funny about that is like that channel was just like an indie channel too, because they were showing like Rockford Files. How'd you?
Yeah, I remember listening to things like the Rockford Files, and also what was that movie with Don Johnson from?
Oh, the original Stepford Wives movie from 1980.
That maybe
they were showing that. Yes, yeah.
It was
they
either
were showing
that.
I remember it. We're like listening to it. I wonder what's happening now.
Or like sitting on behind the school that had an outlet on the back of the building and like listening to TV.
Anyway, that's kind of a ridiculous thing.
Hi, I'm Layla Johnston, and you're listening to the Byte High No Limit podcast.
Cody, do you remember being on another voicemail system and finding voicemail boxes that somebody else had hacked into, and were obviously they had messages? They'd have an outgoing message saying, it was a guy saying, "Hey, Slick, found this number in 2600 magazine," which was a hacker magazine.
Oh, wow.
That was like a hacker, like an illegal hacker publication, I guess. I don't know how they did that. I haven't really looked into that, but I've looked up 2600 magazine. It's an old school hackers magazine. So
yeah, that was a thing we heard and didn't know what it was. And then in the days of the internet, Patrick looked up.
Like, this is these numbers. I mean, so there were people doing the same thing we were. And I remember coming across these voicemail boxes with these people like talking on their outgoing greetings. And they were like adults, and kind of giving out information and just thinking, God, they sound like amateurs. Why would you do this? Because we never... we would leave joke messages and stuff, but for the most part, we were very careful about giving out, anything that could possibly, be linked back to us, other than the fact that we were just dialing in 800 numbers and the company would have our number. We didn't even think about that at that point, but you know what I mean? But it was interesting to us at that point. Did you have anything on that, Cody? The guy who, we remember the guy who he was saying, "Hey, Slick" on the recording, and we thought that was either amusing or dumb or something.
Yeah. I don't know if that was someone's handle at the time that he was talking to.
Yeah, that's right. They had.
We didn't understand it at the time, but as we got older, we thought back on it and realized what it was.
I remember realizing it was like, because it was obviously not. I mean, it was that. And I may be confusing that too. I mean, at one point, I guess we can say this stuff now, but we had hacked into. Nike had two different voicemail line, 800 voicemail lines, and we had hacked into both of those. And it may have been on one of those that we found boxes.
No, it was
voicemail
before
boxes.
that.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. But anyway, the Nike thing was later. But I just wanted another little trick we would do, because we were always trying to trick people. There was star 6-7, which was, that came about, caller ID came about, early 90s here, 1990, 91, whenever that was. Mm-hmm. But then you could we found out you could disable it. You could just dial star 6-7 and then, dial the number, and then they'll just see private on their end. They won't get your number.
The way that we found that out was they did a news story about
That's right.
caller ID.
They were like, "There's the new caller
And-
ID."
Yeah, so they did a whole story about, like, this is going to end prank calling forever on a local news. And me and Patrick are sitting there watching the news with our parents and stuff. And at the very end of the story, they tagged it with, "You'll be able to dial *67 and
block that."
your number."
We were like,
Now,
"Okay,
Jim,
thanks."
what's the weather like? And we're like, "Oh, okay, we're going to remember that."
Okay.
So that's
yeah.
I think that's how we, figured out the star and sequence of digit thing.
So, and
I
but you
remember
could
right.
also, yeah,
Or did
no,
we
no.
already
I
know
remember the
about-
story you're talking about. Yeah. So yeah, they did a story about how we were. I mean, it was caller ID
Like
was
the
like
beginning
it was,
of the
it
news
was new.
story. It was like
Was
a
that-
3-minute
yeah.
news story, and like the beginning of it, we were shitting our pants, and then the end, we're like, "Oh,
Oh, yeah,
star
nice.
67, thanks."
Yeah.
That was back when
Wiping
the
sweat off
people
of
actually.
that.
Well, most of
actually
a news
recording.
report, they're sort of like, they go,
Yeah,
oh, yeah,
well-
Oh,
yeah,
they're
this,
actually,
the whole world is going to change. And by the way, the world isn't going to change at all. We
Yes,
circumnavigated our own story.
The funny thing about that versus today is like back then, and and even before about 15 or 20 years ago, it wasn't all that long ago. It was like, if your phone rang, and it was this odd number, you're like, "Oh, who's calling me?" You didn't just not answer it, Yeah, I mean, of course, you had the choice not to answer it, but it's like, or even if you saw this private, like, "Oh my God, who is this? I have to answer this," and it's
Could
like,
be the hospital, is it?
yeah, exactly.
It could be very important. Yeah.
So, but now, your cell phone rings. I don't know about you guys. My cell phone rings. I don't know the number. I don't answer it. It's like it's not getting answered. They can leave a voicemail if they want.
Once
They're getting a
again,
block
it's
as well.
the polar opposite.
When they finish ringing, they're getting a block.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
So, but
Once
back
again,
then it's
with no one checks their voicemail now, and same kind of thing. When you get a weird number, you do not answer it now, as opposed to
Yeah.
you definitely answered it back then.
yeah. Well, it's a telephone call. It must be important. But, it's a telephone call. Hello, operator. Operator. Used to like when they'd show those old films, those old film noir or whatever, those old 1940s films, and they're like, "Operator, operator," and they're like clicking the switch hook up and down. It's like, you're not doing anything. You're dialing.
I actually used to comment on those when we would watch old movies, and I'm like, he's clicking it at a speed in which it's going to actually think that it's
Dial
a
the
dial
operator.
phone.
It's got to call
10
police.
clicks. 10 clicks will get you the operator. It's a 0, right? Yeah. So
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
they
Was it
were
10
they
or
were onto
11?
something there.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
10 was
10,
a 0 because
I
you
think
can't click it 0
Yeah.
times, right? So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the test. The first test I did was I clicked it 10 times and it called the operator.
We're sorry. Due to network congestion outside the Time Warner network, your call cannot be completed at this time. Please try your call again later. TWC 48.
There's also, of course, and there were other commands that you could do, star.
Yeah, so we
callbacks,
immediately
so
experimented with that,
Yeah.
star and other buttons.
numbers. So there was another one that was you could disable your call waiting. So people would get a busy signal if they called in, and that was *70. Well, at some point we figured out.
I think
that-
people knew about that before, because I think that predated caller ID.
Yeah, probably.
yeah.
But the interesting thing here
go on.
is we figured out that there were still people who had dial phones, so there's not a star in, or it's not an asterisk or a pound sign on those. So how would you dial that? Well, the equivalent on a dial phone is 11. So if you dial 11, that's the same as a star key on a push button phone. So when we figured that out, Cody
Yeah, I
would
think I figured that out.
Cody would trick people if anybody ever asked him, like, "What's your phone number?" Or he would even write this
Yeah.
thing. He would even write it down somewhere, like, "Here's this phone number. You should call it," or something.
Either in
And
a
he would-
prank call or someone I didn't like that I was giving
You'd
them
be
the
like-
phone number to call.
He would basically say, my phone number, it's 1170 or 1170-911. So essentially,
Yeah.
they were disabling their call waiting and then dialing 911.
Yeah.
Or he would say, "My number's 116-7911," and you would be disabling your caller.
They weren't thinking about it being 911.
So he would like trick people into calling 911. Like giving them
I would do it with my friends first, and they'd be like, "I called 911 and my parents grounded me," or whatever.
They're like, "You fell for it," but on
and
this,
you could you could do it on payphones. So I would do that a lot too. Like me and my friends would be somewhere at a store or whatever, and
just out in the public.
Hey, dial this number.
It's 117-0911.
116-7911. Okay.
So, and I guess on the subject of your DTMFs, I guess I read the other day, because I wasn't sure. I knew it went away, but you realized that as far as connecting calls, that's no longer a thing, at least here in the States, and it hasn't been for like almost going on 20 years now. It's like 06 or something like that. But they're still used for, accessing voicemail via phone. They still have to, your systems will still recognize those. But that's why, now, of course, there's no, you try to dial a number on your cell phone, and most cell phones don't even make a noise, if you're actually, or an actual DTMF, noise, whereas some of them will like, imitate a DTMF. And that brings me to my next amazing thing, the thing that I've always thought was so cool, and it's kind of along the lines of the kid who could whistle the the dial tone access thing. Cody, and I wish we could test it. Cody, at some point we realized, had the ability to just hear DTMFs and tell you what number it is.
Oh wow. Yeah.
So, and he can do that to this day. And I mean, I say,
yes,
I say, wow, that's amazing. But, if you think about it, since he was 5 years old or something, we were messing with phones. So it kind of makes sense that after a while you would just, it's like me, I could probably tell you the row it was in, but I can't tell you, oh, that's a 3. That's,
to me, that's all you need to, if you memorize each column and each row has a tone, and when they intersect, that's what number it is.
If a radio station is like, I'm going to call such and such, and they don't mute it, Cody's like, I have that number.
That's a whole other story. Remember the radio DJs that we got into their voicemail?
Oh, yeah.
Because they would call it and check it on the morning show on the radio.
Yeah, and
they
so
just,
Cody could hear
dial
their
into their
passwords.
voicemail. I'm like,
oh,
yeah.
We
So
were like,
would
hey, we can
call
get.
and like, yeah. Anyway,
I don't think we ever took over their boxes, but we could get in there and listen to their voicemails and stuff.
Your call cannot be completed. You have dialed an unauthorized location.
that was a whole other thing too, was fax machines. We'd call those and we didn't know what they were. And then our mom worked in an office that had a fax machine when those were pretty new. And we went up there with her after hours and messed with it, and we sent some prank
always messing with
faxes
electronics, always
to people, to like a radio station and stuff.
Yeah, I remember sending a joke fax and then going, "This is going to be hilarious." And we had taken like a we found a
box of frozen corn dogs in the freezer at this office
for whatever reason.
Room.
Yeah, and we made the corn dogs look like dicks or something. I think I don't know. And we sent it to the radio station. We were like, "This is going to be great." And then we were like, "Oh, look, the phone number's right there."
Yeah, the phone number's at the top of the screen.
There was a title page.
Yeah,
we didn't realize that either.
Fax header page. That's it.
So we didn't even care. We were just we'd always. That was another thing, was we'd always get on their old school, like I don't know even what computer systems they were running up there, but they were the old monochrome green,
probably Apples or something.
I have no idea, but yeah, you could dial into bulletin
boards.
Yeah, BBS and stuff like that. But it was. I don't think we were ever successful finding, because we would find numbers. We would write down the numbers. We would call these 800 numbers that we would get that were modems. We could tell.
It was the phone receiver that you placed on a thing, and that was the modem.
Yeah, the acoustic coupler. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That was super. But she went to a new office and they didn't have those anymore. It was just But
yeah, they
after
had
a while,
like the modem that you just plug the line into. So you know,
we were never successful at that kind of
fuck that
hacking.
new
And probably
bullshit.
we were never successful at that type of hacking, and that's probably a good thing. But so I was totally off of, like, I was like, we're not going to do this voicemail thing anymore, and if we do, it's not going to be 800 numbers anymore. And then Cody found this local university that had a whole voicemail system. It was just like, and we were like semi-familiar with it, and it was just nothing but like incoming students or students who'd come in, and every student had a voicemail box, and about 10% of them had actually set them up.
Yeah, like every student was assigned a voicemail box, and like 90% of them didn't know what voicemail was and didn't
care, you know. So Cody was just like, I found this thing, and he's like messing with it. I'm like,
and the
password
was 1 2 3 4 on all of them.
Let's get the old gang back.
Exactly. Yeah. It had been like a couple of years at that point, remember? And Cody, do you remember I was really trying to deter you? I was like, no, I'm not going to have an angry guy calling us again. But it turned out.
My argument at the time is, this is local. It's not an 800 number. They don't automatically have our number traced. You know, they don't. And have we ended up list.
Like befriending like other. You know, I say kids, they were older than, you know, they were like college age.
There were college students that were also messing with it, and we
doing the same things we were.
Communicate with them and befriend them.
Yeah, so it was actually really cool.
The little hacker community. Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah. And they even I remember one of the students was like, "Hey, we got published in the paper." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, "Yeah, there was this little story in the school newspaper about," and he quoted "those crazy phone mail pirates," you know, because we did so much on that. That was the one that we did the most with. There were like so many stories with that university that we had taken over a large percent of their voicemail system. Once again, not maliciously. We weren't causing any trouble. The people, when they realized that their boxes were taken over, all they had to do was just tell somebody and they were reset. But the people who were running it were obviously kind of inept. So it was very easy to kind of screw with them and stuff. And it was funny. There's a lot of funny stories of us even like calling like administration offices and stuff and trying to like trick people into giving us things, like pretending. So, I mean, and it was all just for, you know, this whole thing, we were never in it to, you know, steal money or anything like that for people. It was just entertainment for us, you know what I mean? So it was like, we were always like, how can we get into that administrator box? And then we would like leave a message saying, you know, pretending to be this other administrator, like, yeah, can you give me that? I need that code so I can send out what they call a broadcast message to the entire. There was a box where you could send out a broadcast message to the entire university, and we're like, oh my God, can you imagine if we could do that? What would we say? You know. And anyway, so us and our little hacker community, that was, you know, some of them were students, were like always trying to figure stuff out like that.
You could send what was called a broadcast message, but you had to like input every single mailbox you wanted it to go to manually.
Oh, really?
Which
but there were
obviously
distribution
was very
lists, though, too.
You'd get a very sore finger with that, yeah.
Yes, but we knew somehow that if you were in one of the higher up voicemail boxes, you could send one, because they would do it all the time. They would do it all the time with like, you know, no, like sometimes, yeah, they would send blank ones a lot, which would piss us off, and it would play it when you logged into a voicemail box. So if we were like checking all of our 58, you know, hacked into voicemails, we'd have to hear it every time because it would make you listen to it and you could not cut it off.
And it would just be blank space.
It would either be this lady telling you that, you know, corn on the cob was not going to happen for lunch today, or it would just be a blank message, but it would still piss us off because it'd be like 8 seconds long. And it would go to every single mailbox, and we wanted to be able to do that ourselves. And
just for a joke, you know.
I think Patrick called and/or left messages for the lady that was like in charge of it, and was like, "I need that master system passcode.
This is Mark. I'm gonna need that. And thinking back, it was really stupid, but we laughed about it.
Well,
anyway.
at that,
we knew
it was. We had nothing to lose at that point, so yeah, we're like, "Fuck it, let's try this."
Well,
and then
and
course,
these people were not.
Passwords got changed, and
we knew we were dealing with people
were
that weren't like super. They weren't super tech savvy, so we were like, we can do whatever we want here, and they're not. We're not. They're not going to come after us.
Not kids.
You were finding them out as well, weren't you? So it's sort of
we were
putting their pants down a bit, yeah.
So
we knew what we were doing, and we have no regrets.
These voicemail boxes we would take over in the same vein of the stuff we would do, where we would leave messages that were like little improv shows or whatever. We would come up with these ridiculous, and sometimes it would be completely spur of the moment. Like, I remember we'd be sitting around, Cody, and you would just like press a button and you just put the receiver up to my head, and I'd hear this beep, and then I'd just start talking some nonsense, and that was the outgoing greeting. So we would have all these bizarre, like, outgoing messages that, you'd have some student trying to access, or you'd have somebody who thought they were leaving a message for the student, like, wow, that's a really weird greeting you got, and so there was a lot of that was really funny. And I'm sure we have tape after tape of, a lot of those weird greetings and stuff, and nothing ever sketchy or scary happened with that stuff, but there were a lot of funny stories with just involving students trying to get their voicemail boxes back, and then us kind of maybe chiding them a little bit, like just kind of teasing them a little bit, like if they were kind of jerks, or we would find our friends that were on campus would be like, yeah, this guy's a real dick, you should mess with him, and so we'd call him up and just make fun of them on their voicemails and stuff. So it was a fun time. That went on for a couple of years.
One thing about this particular system, you could call, like, the voicemail box on some or all of them, I don't remember, you could call, like, a phone number that ended in the last 3 digits of the mailbox or something, and it would, like, dial their room.
You dial right into the room.
Remember that?
Yep, they're like, little.
So you could prank call them also, the same people.
Yeah. If you knew what that was like. So anyway,
and we were not the only people to do this, but I think we definitely didn't hear about it somewhere. There was not an internet back then. It was just like, I figured out, I'd be at school or at a gas station or wherever, and I would call, or, I wouldn't have any money, and I'd want to call my friend, and we already knew that payphones had a phone number printed on them.
Most of which you could dial into back at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A number you could dial to that payphone, which also something you would see in old movies and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I would call my friends with 1-800-COLLECT or 1-800-CALL-ATT, both of which had a lot of celebrity commercials for. And what it would do is it would record a message that you were just supposed to say your name, and it would call the number that you put in and play the name and ask if they wanted to accept it. And if they accepted, of course, it was a collect call that would charge them. Well, I would, for the name, just say the number, and then hang up,
yell out the
and
number.
My friend would call me back on the payphone, and it would be a free payphone call.
But what was the deal with...
Yeah,
go ahead.
I did this for a long time, like maybe a year or so. It's hard to say because, you're a kid. But eventually, after doing this countless times, they started figuring it out. And I think there, like I said, there was 1-800-COLLECT, which was Sprint or one of the
Sprint or MCI,
maybe a defunct company like MCI. And then there was Call ATT. But I remember Call ATT was the first one, I think, to catch on. So suddenly, when we would call it, a person would answer immediately and be like, "What number do you need to call?" And almost like angry, like they knew what we were up to. So we're like, "Oh shit, they figured it out."
Mm-hmm.
And then one of my friends, like, who just didn't care, I remember one time called me from a payphone, and the lady was like, and he had told them they would ask for the number you're calling and then your name, like a normal collect call at the time. And, you know, he gave them a fake name, and then as soon as they would still connect the call,
Mm-hmm.
and when they were asking me if I wanted to accept the charges, my friend would just yell the number out because he could still hear them. So he's like, you know, 43799, and the last 4 digits would always start with a 9 if it was a payphone.
Yeah.
Usually 2 9s, but then they caught on to that, and then they stopped letting you hear the person yelling, and then it was all over. But one time when we were trying this, and I think it was on 1-800-COLLECT or something, but this guy answered, and he was very onto us, and my friend started to yelled out the number, and then the guy from AT&T or Sprint was like,
This is illegal. What you are doing is illegal. Do you know that what you are doing is illegal?
and of course we didn't care, and we were just like yelling over him or whatever. But
What you're doing
But he was
is
just,
illegal.
you know, some operator for AT&T or whatever.
What you are doing is illegal.
Was trying to scare us.
Oh man.
But, you know, I saved probably saved $3 or $4 in change from not having to pay for calls from a payphone.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of people did that, but we did that for a long time before they caught on.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service. If you feel you have reached this recording in error, please check the number and try your call again.
Another thing that we did that was, and I wasn't a part of this to be honest. I just knew that you guys had done this. But remember, we had a friend. I can't remember. I guess he had taken a phone and put and soldered in a couple of wires and the gator clips, the little gator clips.
Mm-hmm.
So he was able to take that and just stand outside like a neighbor's house and clip those things onto their little phone. He just open up their phone box and clip in there. And I remember there was a time when I guess you guys went to a neighbor's house and like dialed up some 900 numbers on that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we would use that to dial 900 numbers, which, you know,
and you're standing
charged
outside
your
somebody's house.
phone bill.
So
and we'd go to people's houses in the neighborhood and plug it in.
You guys only did that like one time, right? This wasn't something you did.
Oh, no, we did it a few times. We did it, one of the notes I made, there was a thing called a TV.
30 years ago.
There was a TV station. There was a TV syndicated channel called The Box where you could order. It was a music video channel, and you could
The Box.
call a 900 number and press in codes and order music videos to watch, and then they would play in order.
It was like 50 cents a video
requested.
or something. Did you guys have that over there,
Yeah.
Carl? Something like that?
We had the box. Yeah, you rang in. Yeah, it's like a jukebox.
Yeah,
video
same thing here.
jukebox,
Yeah. And it was cool because not only because we didn't have cable, so we didn't have MTV, not only that, but like my friends would come over at the time they would show like music videos uncensored or less censored than they've been on MTV.
Mm-hmm.
So that made it more cool. But we would go to just random houses in the neighborhood and use that device that our friend made with the gator clips. And we would make a list. We'd sit there for like hours and be like, yeah, write down that code. Let's see that video. We'd make a list of like, 50 videos or something and then go call. And you could only request 2 per call. I think it was 50 cents per song. So like each call was $1 if you did 2 request, and we would call like 25 times and get 50 songs, and then by the time we would get back home on foot, of course, they would already have started playing them, so we would have missed some. So I think we would factor that in with the earlier songs we would request. Just some spacing so that we didn't care if we missed that one. We called a sex line. I don't remember the details, and maybe you do, Patrick.
Not really. I just remember that you guys, I don't know, you dialed into this number, and
we
was
called
like...
It was a gay sex line for gay men.
Where'd you guys get that number?
At the time, I don't remember if we saw. I'm sure we didn't see a commercial on TV because it probably wouldn't have happened back.
No.
I think we just. I know there was a number that was 800 number that I stumbled upon that was called the Nice line.
Yeah, that's another thing we would find a lot of like the credit card sex line. You had to have a credit card when we were just randomly dialing out her numbers. So I'm sure we found that at some point at that.
Yeah, but I think on those they would give out a 900 number if you just wanted to build to your home phone. So I think that's what we did. But we called this, chat line for gay men, and being dumb kids, we were prank calling them, and this guy like immediately figured out obviously what we were doing and was very snarky, and I wish I could remember the quote, but there was something he said before he hung up on us that was funny. But that's the kind of thing we would do, and then it showed up on the person's phone bill that they called this number. That was
how did you know that though?
Oh, well, I don't know if that one, I think we were careful enough to go to a house that was far enough away. But one of the
like
houses that we used was a neighbor, and
there was a neighbor who talked to our mom frequently.
A neighbor who
and she was
talked to our mom, and the story got brought up in a conversation.
And our mom repeated it to us. And we were like,
relayed the story to us. And she was like, I was hearing the story knowing that it was you guys the whole time, but I never told her. But she was pissed off, obviously.
Our mom knew it was us.
But she totally.
I don't know about that. Well, we were watching a lot of the box back in the day, and there was like 1 million box calls.
Yeah,
so
that's what gave it away. Is we had ordered a bunch of music videos, and the lady was like,
I had these charges for the jukebox on my phone bill, and it was for $300 or whatever.
Oh God, that's terrible. We were terrible. That's some of the not good stuff we did with the. So I mean that kind of counts as some illegal stuff there. We shouldn't have done. That was shitty, but. Another little trick, like when we were talking earlier about those ring test numbers, we figured out at some point that you could dial 890 in any 7 digits, and it would a little computer voice, the computer generated voice would come on and tell you your phone number, and the number you were calling.
I utilized this. I utilized that in conjunction with the 1-800-COLLECT. So if it was a payphone that did not have a label on it that said the phone number, which most of them did, but some of them didn't, then I would dial 890-777-7777, or any, here's an interesting thing. Any 7 digits except the number if you knew the number you were calling from, then it was like, screw you, I'm not going to read the number back that you already know. And it would just give you a busy signal or something. But any other digits would read the number back in a computer voice for what you were calling from.
I talked about working, I had a couple of fast food jobs when I was a teenager, and the other one, the not Virginia one, was at a pizza place, and they had just had a new.
Having trouble.
Sorry. They had hooked up they just got their phone line hooked up, my boss was just like, yeah, we got this new this new second phone line for pizza orders or whatever. And he was like, but I don't know what the number is. And I was like, I know how to figure that out. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, watch this. And then, dial the number, and then it just starts repeating the number 405 just starts saying the number. And he was like, that's cool. And I was like, hey, I put this to use.
I use my skills for good.
Yeah, my phreaking skills.
I'm remembering, when we're talking about this, of course, and I knew this would happen, but I'm remembering more and more details. But the way I discovered 890 and any 7 digits was 897. If you dialed 897 and the last 4 digits of the number you were on, it would also do the ring your phone back.
Okay, so that was like a later, like a 90s. Yeah, that was like a 90s
I think it was
thing,
after the 4-1 whatever stopped working. This one worked, and I don't remember.
You're right.
How we figured that out. But I was just doing 89 and variations, and I figured out 890 and any 7
there
digits.
You go. Once again, just bored and messing with the phone. We hacked into a local, like a major television station's voicemail system, and it had all kinds of cool stuff you could do. You could have it call people. We knew BBSs existed because we had friends who did that sort of thing. But in the mid '90s, we each got a hold of a couple of Commodore 128s and started doing BBS stuff. And then that's when the phone stuff started kind of dying down a little bit. So it kind of led into old computer stuff.
Thanks very much for today, Patrick and Cody. Where can we find you guys on the internet?
Thanks, Carl. Yeah, it's been fun. If you want to check out some old school gameplay, live shows mostly on original equipment and in some cases arcade cabinets. That's where shooting in 1080p or whatever arcade screens, CRT screens. You can find my channel, Classic Game Night Fridays. That's on YouTube. It's just it's at CGN Fridays on YouTube. So Cody, take it away.
Well, we've got Pran Funkels, a show that me and a couple other people host. Patrick's is still on it occasionally. PRANFUNKELS on YouTube, or you can Google it. We, as you may guess, we make prank phone calls and occasionally talk about these kind of things, especially if we call a number and encounter an interesting voicemail system or recording or old operator disconnected message. And sometimes we've discovered some really interesting ones, like the old number for Unsolved Mysteries has something interesting on it.
Unsolved Mysteries.
If it's still there, I don't know. Anyway, if you want to check us out, we've been doing that for quite a while on YouTube. Still at it, still prank calling these days.
And that's you guys are on Saturday nights, usually Saturday night live shows.
Yes.
And
Saturday Night Live.
Saturday Night Live.
And
sorry,
Classic Game Night Fridays. What night is that on? I'm not sure.
Tuesday.
Friday nights mostly. Sometimes we do bonus shows on Saturday.
Thanks very much to Patrick and Cody there for sharing their experiences of phone phreaking with me. Really enjoyed that interview, and I hope that one day we'll be able to come back and record a part 2 maybe. Remember that you can support the podcast by buying me a coffee at ko-fi.com/bytehigh. You can also rate the podcast because that somehow helps with the analytics. You can leave me a comment at TeddyTechStar on Twitter, or you can join the Byte High No Limit Discord. And if you want to know the Discord invite, that will be in the notes. Byte High No Limit is presented by me, Carl. And until next time, keep it blocky.